Good evening. Today is Tuesday, November 27th, 2018. This is the beginning of the Hanson Board of Selectmen meeting. This meeting is being televised by Rick Hanson Cable Access. Please all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hold on one second. Okay, I want to give a moment of silence to Fillmore Willie, who was a retired lieutenant for the Hanson Police Department. Butch became a patrolman in Hanson on August 8th, 1970, and he proudly served the community of Hanson for 29 years, retiring as a lieutenant in 1999. And he passed away on November 16th. So I'd like to give a moment of silence for Butch. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Matt.
All right, good evening, Hanson. Here are this week's announcements. The Hanson Community Christmas applications for assistance are available at Town Hall, Library/Senior Center, Food Pantry, and online at hanson-ma.gov. Applications are due by November 30th. Monetary donations can be mailed to Hanson Community Christmas, P.O. Box 243, Hanson, Massachusetts. Whitman Hanson's Dollars for Scholars will be processing gift order cards for the holiday season as a part of its fall fundraiser. Interested individuals will be able to order gift cards from over 300 nationwide merchants. Dollars for Scholars will receive commission for selling the cards, while the recipient will receive the full face value of the gift card. A Dollars for Scholar representative will be outside of the community room of the Whitman Public Library on Saturday, December 1st, 10 a.m. to noon, in the training room of the Hanson Police Station on Sunday, December 2nd, from 10 a.m. to noon, to answer any questions. Orders may be placed at those times. All gift cards are expected to be delivered by December 8th. Payments should be in the form of check or cash. Hanson firefighters will be hosting Breakfast with Santa on Saturday, December 8th from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. at Camp Kewanee. All are welcome. Holiday Committee and annual tree lighting will be on Saturday, December 8th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Area restaurants will be serving samples of their fare. Santa will light the tree and visit with kids. Fireworks will be top of the evening. The Hanson PTO presents the first Freezin' for a Reason Polar Plunge at Cranberry Cove on Sunday, January 27th, 2019 at 10 a.m. Rain date on February 3rd. To register, go to everbright.com. Everyone registered before December 31st will receive a complimentary towel.
And Matt, as of tonight, the whole board has signed up.
Oh, that's great news.
Yep.
We're all committed.
Yep.
So yeah, and you can also support,
Or we will be.
Yeah.
and you can also support us online at everbright.com. No,
Right.
I think everbright.com, or the link will be there.
What size are the towels? That's going to be important.
Volunteers are needed for the following committees: the 200th anniversary, Capital Improvement, Cultural Council, Economic Development, Elder Affairs, Finance, Historic Commission, Memorial Day Patriot Observance, Memorial Field Trustees, Recreation Commission, and Zoning Board Alternate. Applications for appointment and information on the committees are available on the town website at hanson-ma.gov. Vacancies are on the following board: Board of Health and 2 members on the Hanson Housing Authority. Applications for appointment and information on the committee is available at the town website at hanson.ma.gov. And upcoming meetings: the 200th Anniversary Committee will be meeting this Thursday, November 29th at 7 p.m. Cultural Council, December 5th, 7 p.m. The TIF Committee will be meeting Thursday, December 6th at 6 p.m. Selectmen will be meeting on December 11th and December 18th, both at 7 p.m.
Thanks, Matt. Okay, under new business, the first topic we have is discussion regarding Lake Street. We're gonna have Kate come up. If anybody's here regarding Lake Street, I just ask you that we're gonna let Kate speak first. If you have any questions, just please raise your hand at the end when she's done talking. And then when I recognize you, please state your name and your address, and just ask you to be respectful, please. Go ahead, Kate.
Hello. So we were asked to look into the ownership issues relative to Lake Street, which is a small, undeveloped road between two parcels, which leads to Monpont Pond. And we looked to see if there had been a dedication of that paper street to a public way, or whether or not the town had some sort of ownership interest whereby they could intervene because there has been a fence placed in that way, and what actions the town could do. And our research, our title research, showed that the town in fact does not have an ownership interest. It's not a public way, and the road between the two properties is likely owned by the two property owners, because the default mechanism is that you own to the center line of the road. Whether or not the folks who live in that area have a private cause of action is something that we didn't investigate, nor would we, because we represent the town. But because of the nature and the ownership of that road, the town can't intercede and take action to remove the fence.
Okay.
Okay.
Does anybody here have any questions? You guys on the board? Yes.
Kevin Smith, 81 Ocean Ave. Lake Street's been there since 1903. It's always been part of the history of Ocean Ave. The prior owners, Linda Hodge, had moved her fence 12 inches onto Lake Street and was ordered, I believe, through the court, through the town, to put a fence back because prior to the lake becoming polluted, in the past, people of Ocean Ave, Hanson, part of Ocean Ave, have used that as a boat ramp docking to put their boats in and out. Since the lake has been polluted, nobody's really used it until the lake gets cleaned up, and it will be used again. Prior to the new owners owning it, Linda had lost the house and so on and so on, and the way that we're talking about has, grown up and become filled with bushes and brush. They cleaned it up and now have moved the fence 3 feet over from where it originally was. And when the new owners had purchased the property, we showed them what they were buying, where Lake Street was, and on all the assessors maps, it's clearly shown as Lake Street. When they bought the property, it did say in their deed that they could take over Lake Street that's been there since 1903. It didn't say that they could use it for parking, and that it came with an open door for them to just go on to. They moved the fence without going to conservation to ask them if they could even move the fence, because we wouldn't be here right now because conservation would not allow them to dig the hole and move the fence. And I know this because I've gone to conservation and asked them if I could move a fence, and you got to go through a certain criteria period. They did not do that. So once they got that far, now they figured, well, we tested the water, now we're going to try and take the other remaining part of the so-called half of Lake Street and put our fence here, make our property bigger, and make another parking space. If that was the case, then all of us that have lived there, I've lived there for 10 years, 12 years, I would have used it for additional parking. I don't have enough parking on my lot because of the septic system that we all have had to put onto our properties, have taken our yards, our parking spaces, and made our property tougher to park in. And we've all lived with it without going up and using Lake Street for extra parking. Or another piece of property that is a couple parcels down that the town now owns, which is becoming another parking space. So that's going to become an issue. But right now, by allowing him or the new owners to take over that part of Lake Street and move that fence is like telling the rest of the residents of Hanson, well, if you live next to a paper road, guess what? Come on in, we're gonna let you have it, and this way here, it becomes unusable. The abutters, which is this young lady here, abuts the street, she's never parked there, she's never asked to move the fence over there. She understands that it's part of Ocean Ave, it's always been there. Everybody that could use it for a minute to put the grocery away or extra parking for an hour or so, that's fine. but not to become a permanent parking space just because you bought the property next to it, and just because nobody will do nothing about moving the fence. I mean, from my past experience, Ocean Ave has had a lot of issues.
I'm gonna stop you right there, sir. I mean, we can only go on the opinion of town council. And town council is telling us that it's not town property, that it's a civil matter. So, I understand your concern, but I think you'll have to address that
Who's
with
been
the.
collecting taxes on it for the past 175 years?
That doesn't mean the property isn't owned by somebody that we're collecting taxes on. It just means it's not a public road.
Yeah.
So because it's not a public road, we don't get to say what happens there. It's between the property
We don't have that
owners.
authority.
In the past 12 years living on Ocean Ave, it's been a dispute whether Ocean Ave is a public
Sir, we
road.
can't go by the past 12 years, we can only go by the advice that we're being given right now.
And private owners oftentimes have different claims than a town would, and I, of course, can't advise you, but for easements, there are prescriptive easements, which you gain just like adverse possession through use over time. You can abandon easements. These kinds of disputes happen frequently, but it doesn't mean that the town has jurisdiction to get involved.
No, but at the same time, I'm standing here for the residents that have in the past used it for access for a boat ramp. And I've even approached them and said it would be nice if we finished cleaning it up and we all share it and use it. Then it became, no, it's gonna be mine, and I just don't believe it should be allowed to be taken over. It's part of Ocean Ave, it's been there since 1903. Now all of a sudden the new owner moves in and wants it. Linda Hodge was told to move her fence off of it by the court. Well, I mean, that's documents that, the town did get involved in the past.
And I can't
it's
say
documented.
what information the court had or what happened in that case, but I'll tell you what's recorded in the registry of deeds. So when you buy a house, you record your deed, all of that stuff that is kept on record. That's not what those documents show.
And again, on his recorded deed, it doesn't say he has access to use the road next to him just because it's there.
Right.
So
And by doing this, he
who owns the land under the paper street?
So typically, when you have a situation like this where there's a paper street where two lots have been separated, you own to the center line. So the person to the right owns to the center line on that side, and the person to the left owns to the center line on that side, and you meet in the middle. So that's where the ownership is. And whether or not others have the right to access and use that road, depending upon what your deeds say, is something separate and apart from what the town can enforce.
So, but if I were a homeowner that owned to the other side of that paper road, then I might, and they've encroached on what you're saying might be what I should be owning, which is my half of that street.
Yeah.
Then I might have a case to take against
That's
these
right.
folks and say, you've gone further than what you're allowed on this paper road. We're not suggesting
Right.
that, but that's a possibility.
Right. I'm not saying that you folks or anyone at home or in the audience doesn't have their own rights that they could go and enforce. I'm saying the town can't enforce it on your behalf.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, I'm sorry. Brenna Audette, 39 Ocean Ave. I'm the direct abutter to this road. Do you have a map?
I do.
Can I see it?
I have several maps. Several plans.
That's okay.
This is a hot topic.
We have, in your packets, we have 11 by 17.
This one,
I saw that.
Okay.
I don't know how big.
this one isn't great
Those are
because it
two.
doesn't really show the road.
So where?
Here's the assessor's map.
And then anyone else
Here?
in the audience, there are packets with this information if you're interested.
So here's
Front
Lake
desk.
Street
Yeah,
there.
there's packets up here if anybody wants.
Okay.
So, Kevin, where am I?
Yeah.
Where am I?
So here's Ocean Ave here.
Oh, so
Here's
there's
Lake
Lake
So there's
Street.
Lake Street
to the
Plain.
pond.
It
So-
says Lake Street.
Okay, so these two are my parcels
Yeah.
right here.
Yeah,
So you're saying, by virtue of it not being assessed to anyone, it's split between Bob and Sue and I.
So I'm saying typically, I'm not here, I can't, so it would be unethical for me to give you legal advice because I'm not your lawyer. But I'm saying typically,
nothing-
in this type of situation, the owners own to the center line, the owners to the right and to the left, or north and south, east or west.
The main issue seems to be is that, that road is like a byway, so the people behind us at 38, like use that to go out to fish, which hasn't
Sure.
been a problem.
Yep.
And the town plows all the snow there in snowstorms because otherwise they plowed on my septic, which is like no bueno, right? Which is fine, but people, I guess, are considering that like an access to the pond. So it's upsetting. I mean, I don't care because my fence is where it is. I'm not going to move it. Bob's fence is where he moved it. He's not going to probably move it anymore. Even if it was split between Bob and I have no intentions of doing anything more than I've done with it. But it is a hot topic on the street, as in people consider it a byway to the pond. It's always been a byway to the pond, and it's really upsetting to like everyone, I guess, besides Bob and I that abut it, that it wouldn't be open for public use. So I don't really know how you can best make this better for other people.
I believe that.
Sir, excuse me,
I'm sorry.
you're not recognized. Go ahead,
I
ma'am.
just don't know how we can make everyone on the street happy, because Ocean Ave has it has a bad rep, and I don't believe it should have a bad rep. There's very nice people that live there.
Yep.
It's a very nice community of people that live there, and I wish that the town would recognize that as a nice area and have it not have a bad reputation, but it does. And so, I mean, I was on the Concom, and I joined that for the purpose of helping people on the street, and I don't know how to rectify this and make everyone happy.
Yeah.
And even though I live there, and I'm not going to move my fence anymore or impede anyone from access to the street. I don't know how we can rectify this and make people happy.
So I'm not sure in these situations that you can never make everyone happy
I know,
because they have divergent
I
interests.
just like to make people happy.
Yeah.
So I live on. I'm like, everyone has to live in that community. I don't know if you've been down there, but it's like this, right? And so I can like give Denise toilet paper from my bathroom window.
That's convenient.
Like, it's very nice. But it's a very close community, and people are like this. So if there's discord, then people are angry. And
Yeah.
I wish that we could come to some sort of like a common way of just making this like a happy situation. Like, Bob can have his fence where it is. I mean, he moved it. Kevin could still get down with the boat if he wanted to. Jay could still get moved. The town could put snow there.
Yeah.
And everyone could just sort of get along, because we don't need any more.
I mean, the only thing I've seen really work really well in these types of situations where there isn't unity in the neighborhood is having a neighborhood meeting. It starts there, right? It starts with people putting faces to names and building relationships and saying what works for you. I assume Bob is the gentleman who put up the fence.
On the other side.
Okay, so I mean, if it works for this gentleman here that he can still bring his boat down to the pond and that works for everyone, that's really a great solution. But the only way to do that is amongst yourselves, and either you can litigate it, you can have bad feelings, or you can try to work with one another. But
do we really want to spend the money to litigate this? Like, really, do we really want to spend the money? Because I don't. I personally don't.
She's not suggesting that. She's just giving you your options.
No, I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying, can we all just sort of get along?
That would be really nice.
That would be so nice. But like, I'm sure, I don't know if you know, but like, Ocean Ave has a bad reputation, and I feel that it's undeserved. Okay, it does have a bad reputation. There's been some people in the past. They're not here anymore. But it has a bad rep.
Yeah.
And the town doesn't necessarily like it. But it actually is full of really good people.
Yeah.
And I think that
sure.
it's like it's people are renovating. They're doing more to make it better. It's like a little slice of paradise for me. I love it here, and I just wish that everyone would just be happy.
Sir, over here in the Red Sox jacket.
Thank you. Bob Fortier, 45 Ocean Ave. I am the other abutter with Brenner Road, Lake Street. A few months ago, I talked to Mr. McHugh about the concept of discontinuing Lake Street. Felt it was in the best interest of the town. Based on what you had said tonight, I believe that is not really an issue. It's already been somewhat consummated, if you will. To answer some of the questions, I think according to Mass General Laws, Part 1, Title 14, Chapter 84 deals with this particular issue. And I think the real issue here, which I believe Kevin is bringing up, is, quote, right of passage or lake rights. Nothing we've done blocks or obscures anyone from accessing the lake. I've heard about deeded lake rights, whether they exist or not, I really don't care. The only thing we're trying to do is maintain an area so that people could have their overflow parking go there, etc. And if someone were to launch a boat, my question to the town would be very simple. Given the nature of the road, where would the person put their vehicle with the trailer right after they launched the boat? That's really the question. Most people in the area launch kayaks and that. So that's the only thing I have to say, and I thank the selectmen and yourself also for clarifying the situation in my mind.
Okay, so just to kind of summarize, it sounds like you guys all have the same goal. You know, that you guys all wanna, you all wanna get along, you know, so I think you should take Kate's advice and have a meeting, you know, and get everybody together, you know. I've pretty much heard the same thing from all of yous and just try to get it to work out. But we're basically sitting here saying that it's not the town of Hanson's issue right now, unfortunately. You know, as far as the boat, I can't answer that question. You know, there's a boat ramp on Mont Ponce Lake that you can launch a boat from on 58 and park your truck.
Exactly.
I don't think that cars should be parking with trailers on the end of it, that's just me, you know, so,
But
I just,
again, that's not a town matter.
it's not a town matter, so, you know, I just hope that you guys can all work it out, because I truly believe you guys all have the same goals that you're trying to accomplish, okay? But thank you all for coming, and we do have to move on,
So
okay?
may I clarify one more matter? I'm
Sure,
sorry.
go ahead, ma'am.
So as far as you guys are saying, as far as the town is saying, Lake Street is owned cooperatively by myself and Bob.
No,
Like,
we're
no,
saying
no?
that the town
The town
does
doesn't
not own this as a public way. We can't give you advice as to what your ownership interest is. I'm saying typically, when you own abutting a paper street that's not laid out as a public way, you own to the center line. But it all depends upon varying factors that we can't advise you on. So
who can advise us on this?
So you would have to either do the research yourself, and you actually have all the documents that you need, and read your deeds, and you can do some legal research online or get your own attorney. But I can't give you advice because I don't represent you.
But you do realize that the surveying of that street is like totally blocked, or do you not?
Well,
So,
it
like,
doesn't
my
matter because
septic
we went by the
system-
deeds. We went by the deeds, so it's what the language of the deeds reads. So if there's a marker that's misplaced, for example, on the ground, you know how you're marked out on your property with bounds, like granite bounds. If that's misplaced, it doesn't matter to our interpretation because what we do is we look at the documents to see if there's been a dedication of the road or a layout or some other gift, which predated the streets chapter in the general laws.
So as far as the town of Hanson is
that's what it is.
concerned, no one cares about Lake Street.
That is
Not
not
a
what
matter
we're
of
saying.
anybody
We're
cares
saying
about
that it's not, it isn't.
It's not your concern, is what you're saying.
No, we're concerned about what's going on there, but we have no responsibility or authority
No legal rights.
to do anything there.
That
Because
it really
we could
is
be-
authority or jurisdiction
Right.
then. We
Well,
just,
I'm not judging you, I'm just asking you for advice as to what we should do as far as what's going on with it. I mean, I can go to the Plymouth Registry of Deeds and look up my deed research, but it's like 1,500 points northwest of the southwest marker, and that means nothing to me. I mean, I'm not a, and if we had a surveyor out, I could have one surveyor and he would tell me I own this, and then another one that could tell me I own this. It just, that street is a mess. You guys know this. I mean, you know it. So, in the interest of making people happy, I guess we should just maybe leave it as it is. Bob can leave his fence where it is, and people can access it how they can, and then is that,
It's that, if that's what you guys decide to do, then
Is
that's
that-
what you do.
so your recommendation is like we have a neighborhood meeting of
That's
some
correct,
sorts
ma'am.
and just sort of figure out the
That's
best.
correct. I
Yeah.
think that's the easiest way and the cheapest way to resolve this.
Okay.
and,
Okay.
listen,
Good, sure.
I wasn't sure. Did you say that the town plowed this street?
Yep.
The town doesn't
plow a
plow,
lot of private ways.
I mean, this is, we're not talking about private way,
the
we're
town
talking
does not plow that street. It plows all the street from Ocean Ave
Right.
into that
Correct.
street, because otherwise they'd have to put it on my $37,000 septic system, and that's not happening.
So Lake Street ends
It's an
up for the
overflow
winter
plow.
is an overflow of snow. Okay,
Correct.
but we don't plow it.
No, you guys don't plow it. It's like an overflow, and it serves very well for that purpose. I mean, every
And
winter.
is this
Paper
fence,
street.
is this fence in the way of the overflow? This is, we're gonna change the
It's
flow.
not really-
Haven't heard anybody complain.
But the snow would still be able to go there.
Of course.
Okay.
That's correct.
Okay? Okay, last question. Go ahead, sir.
If I can find the research, because I believe I did go through a lot of the deeds, and I do have two surveyors right now working on Ocean Ave because I have an issue with my own property. I believe back when that was an ice house, that road was an access road for the trucks to go onto the lake and cut ice out. That's why it was put there.
Okay.
It was a access road for the ice house to actually cut blocks out, load them on the trucks, and go, because that was the house was originally a business, an ice house, we bought that ice,
Okay.
and the trucks would park there, and access the lake from that. If I can find that, is that legal and proof enough to show that it was a road, it's been a road? And just because the house is gone, does not delete the road? It was used for a business, whether it was private or not, it was a road, it was put
I
there
think the
for a
town
reason.
still stands in the same position, sir.
It could be a license, it could have been leased, it could have been a whole bunch of things. So, but what's clear from the records is that it's not a public street.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
May we be excused?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the time.
Welcome. Have a good night. Okay, next, under new business, Kate, don't go anywhere.
Okay, I'm up again.
100 Hawks Ave, the light control property transfer. So you guys should have a copy of the purchase and sales. I saw
The
that.
purchase and sale in the packet, I think it's on
I
your.
think that's just for you, Kenny. I
Oh,
can tell
okay.
you what.
I did have one.
Well, why I'm here tonight is we've been meeting with the light control folks for a little while now. And obviously they're trying to gift the land to the town, and the idea is that you can construct your highway department building there. So in any event, as you also know, there's been a huge environmental cleanup that they've undertaken, millions and millions of dollars, and they've done it very successfully with DEP's giving full sign-off. What we ran into a little trouble with was there's still some ongoing monitoring that's required by DEP. Now it's required on the other parcel that we've subdivided out the parcel that we're going to be receiving. But the other parcel, which eventually is intended to be gifted to Mass Fish and Game, it still has monitoring requirements. And there's a restriction, and this doesn't really implicate the town too much, but there will be a restriction as to tapping wells on the property, so you couldn't develop it as residential or something like that in the long run, which is, I'm assuming, pretty fine by you guys. But
What other
that's,
restrictions are there?
so it's just that because they don't want to pull water, which would cause a migration of water, which potentially could recontaminate. I mean, theoretically, they've done a huge cleanup, so even if you did that, it likely wouldn't happen, but theoretically it could, and they're watching it. So we wanted to ensure that the town wasn't absorbing any liability or risking any liability, I should say, by taking this property. Suddenly you're there with a brownfield or something.
Right.
So we actually had a long discussion with the lawyers and engineers from the other side. Was it yesterday or even last week? I can't remember. But, and we proposed changes to the purchase and sales agreement, which would better protect the town in that event.
Well, so can you drill down a little bit on this? Because this was one of the things that I've been concerned about with
Sure.
this property.
Yeah.
Is that I don't know the intimate details of the light control Hubble deal.
Yep.
But it seemed to me as though a deep pocket was going to disappear in that deal for us to go back after them if we ended up owning some kind of environmental nightmare. And that was always my concern. It seemed like a bit of a Trojan horse. It was like, well, great, we're getting this building with potential environmental issues, and if we start plowing ahead with this, and you know, and even though we've been assured by DEP, et cetera, and hopefully, I think we were supposed to have our own guys check that out too to make sure that there weren't contaminants. Somebody acting independently for us and not on behalf of Light Control and Hubble. Who would we be able to go after, if you will?
So that's what we wanted to ensure, that if there was a contaminant that was found or happened to migrate from the other property onto this property, that those, the light control folks would still be liable. Because of course the person who causes the environmental damage is ultimately responsible. But if you don't insure that, it could transfer to you, and that's why we changed certain terms in the purchase and sales agreement. And we're
Because
hopeful.
one of the things, when this originally was proposed, was I started really looking at, you know, these mergers and acquisitions where the company that was absorbed effectively had nothing else. And my understanding is right now for Light Control, I think that this is all that they have. I think they've effectively disposed of all of their other assets other than this one little piece. And so in my mind, I thought, well, wouldn't that be convenient? Hubble would be able to just say, well, that's not ours, it was Light Control. We're
Right.
Hubble, we're a different company. So you're saying that you've restructured this agreement so that
the town won't
Okay.
be responsible. Exactly. Because if there are monitoring requirements, and there aren't monitoring requirements on this property, but we were concerned initially because they mentioned it. It's actually on the other property, so it will be the state that has to worry about that issue. But even the monitoring of the property could be costly. You know, it could be $10,000 or something to do the engineering tests that would need to be done, whatever sampling needed to be done. So we wanted to make sure that that was all buttoned up. And Bob from my office, who does all the closings, did that. We've proposed it back to Light Control. And if they accept our changes, we would recommend to go forward. And what we're asking for you tonight is to authorize Kenny to sign all the documents, first of all, to accept the gifts and sign all the documents that would be necessary for the conveyance. But that being said, if there's something that comes up between now and closing that concerns us, we'll come back to the board, and we won't force Kenny to make that decision on his own. We'll come back to the board and apprise the board, and then you can decide what to do at that
Do
point.
we have any restrictions on what we're able to do with that property? Because although the town did vote to accept the gift,
Yep.
in fact, it is not a foregone conclusion that it will become the highway department, because we've got to fund all of that. And Kenny's been working diligently on this for a number of years, as I'm sure you're aware, along with the whole other group of volunteers. But we can't, you know, here, we can't be certain that town meeting will appropriate that money to, in fact, make that building into a highway building. And I guess I'm wondering, let's play this forward, worst case scenario, because that's where I live, is, you know, we accept the gift, we convey the deed, all that other good
There's no
stuff.
restrictions.
You know, can we sell the property after that?
So it's suitable for general municipal purposes.
Okay.
It wouldn't be suitable for a condo complex.
Residential,
Yeah.
so is that a restriction?
It's not a restriction, but because of the drilling restrictions where we don't want water migrating from the fish and game site, it wouldn't be suitable.
Okay, so there's no deed restriction?
No.
Okay, so we're just saying, like, it's a gentleman's agreement that we kind of commonly all understand that this is not how that property should be used?
Yeah, it just wouldn't be suitable for
Okay,
it.
all right.
But I think the location isn't suitable for
No,
that anyway.
no. Okay.
Did you have any more questions?
Did we do our own independent hazmat analysis of that property?
No.
Of that particular, of the property that's being donated?
Oh,
No.
because it went through full, so DEP, obviously, they have their own engineers on site, so even me as the advocate for a client at DEP, I have to prove to their engineers that it's sufficient, and let's just say they're strict, they're sticklers, so we felt comfortable relying on DEP sign-off, and they gave a full sign-off.
Okay, because I just want to make sure, you know, if we're proposing that we have our town employees there,
Yeah.
and, you know, we're thinking, woo, this is a much better highway building, it really wouldn't be if it turns out that there's toxic materials under that
Right.
building.
No.
So I
The
okay,
other thing we have to keep in mind is the contamination is on the master wildlife property.
I do
and-
not, I understand that that's what the DEP study says, but I'll tell you, if you talk to any old timers in town,
Yeah.
they will all tell you that that site is notorious for all of the different reflector, all of the paint, all of the, I mean, so to say, I think it would be quite naive of anybody to say that we could with all certainty say that any kind of environmental hazards are specifically restricted to that one little area. You know, I have no doubt that that's probably the majority of it, and I do think people have done due diligence. You know, I'm not saying that, but I absolutely can't drink the Kool-Aid saying that the rest of the property is pristine.
Well, any contaminated property, people always get worried with their historical knowledge, but this went through a full cleanup phases 1 through 4 with final sign off with DEP. It was really onerous and specific.
They spent 3 times as much as they originally anticipated, too.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right, so you feel like we're protected if anything goes south?
Yes.
They've done due diligence. There's nothing that you find alarming?
No, yeah.
Okay. Other people might have questions, I don't know.
Any questions? No?
Okay,
Boss?
did you? Okay, so did you want me to read the motion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Pursuant to Article 17 at the May 4th, 2015 special town meeting, I move to accept as a gift a parcel of land which is described as follows: a certain parcel of land with the buildings and the cell tower site located on Hawks Avenue in Hanson, Plymouth County, Massachusetts, and shown as Lot 1, containing approximately 9.52 acres on a certain plan entitled Plan of Land, Hawks Avenue in Hanson, Mass., dated August 24th, 2018, and owned by Light Control Corporation, and further that the chair shall be authorized to execute any documents required to effectuate said gift.
Second. But,
Motion's
You
been
gonna ask
made
about
and
the cell
seconded.
tower?
no, not
No.
yet.
Mistake,
Okay.
good.
Only that, Kate, you would mention if there is no changes, we authorize Kenny, but if there is changes, it doesn't say it in the motion, but you would come back to us anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, because we would want to make sure you had full knowledge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're
it's
saying, do you
as
want me to
Laura read.
modify it to say as presented tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So can we
works.
modify the motion appropriately, Mary, to say that we're moving Kenny sign this as, you know, presented to
Or that
us
the chairman
tonight?
shall be authorized to execute
Yeah.
any documents required to effectuate the gift as of this evening?
No.
As
As per
presented.
the documentation presented to us tonight.
I mean, Kate, you said it, I just don't want Kenny to be forced into signing something that's been alter it even a little bit.
Well, I don't think he wants
I-
that on him either,
I
because,
appreciate
yeah, he'll want to circle back if there's something.
Hold us to the
I
fire.
want to get it done, but I want to get it done that bad.
Yeah. And just to be clear too, in terms of deed restrictions, this has nothing to do with environmental contamination, but what you read reflects the fact that there is a cell tower on site, and you all know this, there's a cell tower on site, and the folks who connect to the cell tower will have access to the tower, obviously.
So is that going to be an easement on the deed? Is
Yeah,
that-
Yes.
okay,
yeah.
all right.
So that is a deed restriction
Okay.
to some degree.
So second.
Okay. Any questions? All those in favor? 5-0. All right, Kate.
Great, thank you so
Thank you
much.
very much. We appreciate it.
Oh, Kate, would you be so kind as to give the board a quick update in terms of, yeah,
JJ's, yes.
Thank you.
Right. And on JJ's, I sent you all a package. I hope you got it. And what the package was a complaint against the owner and a motion for a preliminary injunction to enforce the board's order from the last time we met, because Ms. Harrison did not construct the fence as was directed. So I went in and filed it with the court due to the holiday. Usually when you file, what you saw in the package was a short order of notice, which means you can go into court quickly. And usually that's scheduled within 10 days of you filing. But with the holiday, they pushed me off and we're having a hearing on Monday. So at that point, the judge will listen to the arguments of my argument, and if she shows or her counsel shows the defense against that argument, and either issue, likely he'll issue an order that says you have a certain amount of days, because they never say do it today, a certain number of days to put in that fence, and if you don't, the town can do it, and it will be at your expense, subject to a lien. So,
And so part two, which is the actual cleanup, which
Yep.
is, really the main event here.
Yeah.
The deadline for that is the 15th,
the
right?
15th.
Okay, and so at that point, if no forward movement has been made at all on the cleanup, then we'll have another hearing about that?
Yes, so I'm not sure if Mike, did you sent them the emails right on the updates, or should I just update them? So there has been some progress
I have
on.
updated them back and forth, but why don't you,
Oh, okay, so there has been some progress. In order to pull the demo permit, she needs to have a pest inspection, and she did in fact have that done, and it came back as clean. There were no rodents or wildlife or whatever would be creeping around in there. So which would say that she could remove the debris. The one thing she's missing is the environmental assessment. It costs $700. Apparently, she said to Bob Curran, who was just here, that was too steep, and she couldn't afford that price. But who knows if she will? I mean, that's sort of a drop in the bucket when you think of the actual cost for the cleanup. But
We won't be permitting her to clean it up until we know what
need to
hazardous
kn-
materials are there.
she needs to pull
right?
the permit. In order to have the permit issue, you need that piece, so the permit wouldn't issue for that. And if she did it under cover of night, not to suggest she would, but if she did it under cover of night, there would be enforcement action, obviously. But there has been some forward progress. Of course, it wasn't timely because she was supposed to have pulled that permit earlier. But at least some progress is making me a bit optimistic.
Have we actually
We'll
seen
see.
the pest report?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
We did. So, and her lawyer, I forwarded, she's been served with that paperwork. She was served yesterday, I believe. And I forwarded the information on to her lawyer, who had appeared here on her behalf, so that he was fully aware. He hasn't contacted me for a continuance or anything like that. So hopefully we'll just go forward on Monday.
All right,
And
so-
I believe Mike has found some money or asked for some money from FinCom.
yeah, actually, FinCom is meeting, I believe as we speak, to hopefully consider and transfer the appropriate amount of monies for the fence.
Yeah, it was actually, the fencing was actually much more expensive than we initially
Yeah.
calculated. I think it's upwards of $10,000.
It's just a little before 10,
Yeah.
below 10. I asked for the full 10 just for contingency purposes.
What's the time frame that you would get the fence
Yeah.
for that
Well,
period?
that's a
$10,000.
whole nother issue. I've reached out, and Bob has reached out to various vendors. The one that has come back with the price that we're going with right now would be 3 to 4 weeks out. So.
But I mean, how long, for 10,000, how long would they keep the fence up for?
Oh, I'm
'Cause it's
sorry.
a rental, right?
Yeah, it's a rental.
Is that a year, is that 6 months, is that
No,
2 months?
I believe it's 2 months.
2 months.
2 months for
$10,000.
$10,000? And does it matter whether the ground is frozen? Are we gonna run into?
No, I don't
Because it
believe
goes
so.
on top of the fence,
Okay.
on top of the ground.
I don't believe so.
Oh, all right, yeah, it's
Yeah.
the, yeah.
But what I've done, just so the board is aware, and I thank Matt for helping me with this, one of the sources that we're using in terms of pricing is we've reached out to companies that are on the state contract. So, and typically they come in an awful lot less, and I did get a contact back from one of them just today, and he's going through the particulars and the motions right now, so.
Okay.
And that would preclude any procurement sort of requirements.
Okay, but if we play this out and you're looking at 3 to 4 weeks, if they start the cleanup, they're gonna effectively have skirted the requirement for the fence.
Almost, yes. Yes.
Okay, I mean,
Yes.
I'm not happy about it, but I
Nope.
want it cleaned up.
Essentially, if they clean it up before we
Yeah.
put the fence up, then we
There's no
save
reason for
$10,000.
the, yeah, there's no reason
Yeah.
for the fence.
Right.
But we don't save it, they save it.
Yeah, well, we have to put it up and then
Kate
chase
said
it to
would
get
be
it
a-
back.
Well, there would be no chasing, it's just a lien against the property
Yep,
when they
yeah.
sell it.
Yeah, we would get it back
Still-
eventually, but of
Yeah.
course it'd be easier if we didn't have to do any of this in the first
Kate,
place.
one quick
They'd
question on
apply.
the, when's the anticipated closing date on this light control property?
It, barring anything blowing up,
Yeah.
a week.
Okay,
So
so it'd be
before
done
the
this
end of the
year?
Yes, it has to be done this year.
Okay,
Yeah,
good, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, excellent.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, do you guys think the police chief's been waiting patiently?
Not so much.
I think he wanted to hear all about all
I think
this
he
stuff.
wanted to hear. Appointment, well, we're gonna move around a little bit. Appointments of part-time police officer Nicholas Pike and Mario Thompson. We've got a letter here from the police chief. He probably doesn't want me to read it, so I'll let him just give us a briefing on these two young men that he would like us to appoint for part-time police officers. Chief?
I'll give you a quick synopsis. In this current year's budget, I tried to go back to a way that we used to operate in the Hanson Police Department, in that a lot of the officers started on as part-time officers, and I'm trying to make a distinguish between two different types of officers. We'll have specials, which is gonna be basically my people doing road jobs. I got a lot of retired guys want to stay on and do that, and that's fine. It's very helpful to us, actually. But what I was hoping to do, to go back to the way they used to do it, is hire part-time officers. And those part-time officers actually go through a field training process and would eventually be signed off to work the cruises to supplement the full-time force. I've got no opposition from within the department, from the union. They're actually, if anything, I've gotten, they're enthusiastic about it. I think because they figure they're going to get Thanksgiving and Christmas off. But whatever, it works. We currently do have one officer. Officer McKinnon can actually work in the cruiser. So what we're hoping to do, and this has been kind of a longer process than I wanted it to be, was put on two more, get them through the process, see how it's working, and then potentially put on some more. The other plus I have to this, and a lot of departments do this, it's a dress rehearsal for the real thing. If for whatever reason, they're not working out, it's much easier to deal with an officer on a part-time status before they become full-time and we own them. We don't have much of an investment in them yet. They've already been through a part-time academy on their own. So that shows a bit of motivation on their part. And then the other thing is, if currently I have two officers that tomorrow can tell me they're done. They've got their time in, they can retire. They've been kind enough to give me general ideas as to when they plan on going, which is much more helpful for planning, especially trying to get people into an academy. But if I have these part-time officers already trained and signed off to work in the cruisers, if one of those full-time officers leaves, we can then make an appointment to full-time. I can get a waiver to work them, I think it's 180 days, to then get them into a full-time academy. So we'll get a little savings on the backside. And I think the most important part of this is we get to try them out before we put them on
We've got a little
full-time.
farm team going.
Yeah, we don't, yeah, we're not rolling the dice with somebody, so.
Now, do we post these positions? Okay, so anybody could have applied?
We had over 40 applications
Okay.
came in. I still have a stack. I still plan on taking some of them eventually. But we're kind of going baby steps with this. Plus, I had to get another officer within the department, trained as a field training officer. So that's happened. They're ready to go. I got 2 sergeants signed off as field training supervisors. So they got that part of the process done internally. Now I want to put these 2 young men on and give them a shot.
Now, how do you whittle down that field of 40 applicants? Do you guys
So,
interview them?
It depends upon how I put the the announcement on originally. And I'm going to go off the top of my head here, but basically I required them to have some academy experience already, whether it be the part-time or the full-time. Usually anybody with a full-time academy, they're not applying for part-time
Right.
jobs, and if they
Yeah.
are, that's usually a big red flag for me. Something's up. So we put out looking for basically anybody that had experience, wasn't necessary in it, but had the part-time academy. These 2 gentlemen do. On top of that, they have education. On top of that, they both are already working in other towns. One in Norwell, one in Duxbury. So they're very good candidates, and they're both hometown boys, which it's nice to get a little mix of
Definitely.
those that grew up
Yep.
here and those that didn't. So, but the first one I'd present to you is, I'm sorry, is there any more questions though?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chief. Only that you said they're both working now. Does that present a problem to you to put them on, or
No.
do you work?
Yeah,
around-
we'll work around them. They're here to supplement. So we put a small amount of money in the budget this year to so that I have some money to train them. So we'll bring them in and we'll train them. And then, you know, when we get through the full-time list for the overtime, if they don't want it, they're up for it. If I see that they're not getting that much work and we're not seeing too much of them, you know, we'll poke and prod them to get in a little bit more, or I'll work with the union to say, hey, let's bring them in to let them supplement and get a little more training. The money was really to bring them in and get them trained.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, between details and overtime, there's been plenty of work, so we should be able to work them. And like I said, they do have other jobs, but they know the requirements here. So the first one I'd offer up is Mario Thompson. Mario grew up in town. He's a graduate of Whitman Hanson. He successfully put himself through the Plymouth County Police Chiefs Association Reserve Academy. And he graduated. He's got a bachelor's degree from Bridgewater State in criminal justice and a minor in psychology. Mario's currently working full-time as a harbor master in Duxbury. The harbor master falls under the police department. He's also a special police officer for the town of Duxbury. And he's also been an auxiliary officer in Whitman. I think one of the other things or 2 things that stuck out with me with Mario, one of his other jobs was he's a personal care attendant for somebody who's disabled, which, you know, that's, for a kid to put himself through college and have that demanding of a job is impressive. And the other thing is he volunteers a lot. He's a football coach for Whitman Hanson and with the little kids as well as at the high school level. So he's invested in town, and he's an outstanding candidate. We had them sign waivers. We've already done backgrounds on both of them. They both came out, I mean, just superstars, to be honest. And the Duxbury chief and I are very friendly. He's a personal friend of mine. He spoke extremely highly of Mario. I'm very suspicious when other people talk highly of their employees. I think they want to get rid of them half the time, but I've met Mario. He's a good kid. And the first thing that the Duxbury chief said to me is, "You better not be stealing them. I need them." So,
Not yet, Tom.
so Mario Thompson would be my first candidate. The second candidate is Nicholas Pike. Nick also is a Whitman Hanson graduate. He's also a graduate of Bridgewater State, where he majored in criminal justice and minored in communication. He also had put himself through the Reserve Intermittent Police Academy over in Plymouth, and is a graduate. And he's currently working as a special with the Norwell Police Department. He also worked at the Duxbury Harbor Master as a part-timer at one point. I think, again, he'd be another great candidate for us.
They sound great. Are we looking for a motion?
Yes, absolutely.
I move that we appoint Mario Thompson and Nicholas Pike as part-time police officers for the town of Hanson.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions?
Could I just add something?
Absolutely.
Could you possibly, this I've found in my experience is tremendously helpful to me, is if you make the motion with specific dates for me, and they have different dates, because it becomes
Seniority down the
seniority
road.
issues
Yeah.
down the road and the pecking
What
order.
dates do you want?
So,
What dates do you look for?
Mario, we have a ranking system when we interview them. Mario actually came out on top. So Mario Thompson would be December 3rd, starts the pay period.
Yep.
And Nicholas Pike due December 4th.
Okay, so I move that we appoint Mario Thompson effective December 3rd and Nicholas Pike December 4th as part-time police officers for the town of Hanson.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? 5-0.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right,
Chief.
thank you, chief. Okay, vote to declare surplus equipment. The Council on Aging, 2008 Eldoro Astro van. Yeah, I hacked that. We're not gonna read the VIN number. And also Recreation 10-foot Delta Unisaw with the serial number. Not quite sure what a Unisaw is, but looking to surplus those
Me
items.
too, it's 10-inch, I'm assuming, 10-inch
Yeah.
unisaw.
You need one of those, don't you, Ken?
Yeah. So I'm looking for a
So
motion to
moved.
surplus.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? Good, because I don't think I could answer them anyways. All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, next we have requests for a one-day liquor license for Kerry Donnelly, 1375 Main Street, December 6th from 6 to 9, a fundraiser for the Hanson Chair.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, old business, we're gonna just hold off on that. Town administrator's report, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very briefly, I've received word that within the next month or so, we will start receiving credits from the solar program, the solar project that we signed on to in Westport through Blue Wave. I will update the board at the next meeting as to the exact value of those credits. I was happy to see that that has pretty much come to fruition. The board is probably aware of the fact that, I think it was the day after we last met, I met with the school committee. We had agreed to, through the RFP process, to go back to the school committee and get their blessing for the cell tower that is scheduled to be built on their grounds, and I did get their approval. I did forward earlier today a letter from the attorney representing the project known as Depot Village. It is a 40B. I have been asked to write a letter of support. The letter of support mainly would, well, not mainly, would be directed towards some funding that the state allows for such projects. My not signing this would not stop the project. I think the Board of Selectmen can appreciate what the 40B process is, and that I think that it's in our best interest that I sign that letter and show cooperation going forward. I am going to check. My understanding is there was a final sign-off this evening, or planned to be this evening with Concom, which is one of the few department's one of the few boards and committees that actually do have some input during the whole 40B process. So I will be checking with them probably tomorrow morning at some point to make sure that everything is signed, sealed, and delivered, and unless the board has any really strong reservations, I plan on signing that letter of support so that they get the funding that the state allows them.
Again, Mike, we're not dismissing concerns from, because there's been a lot of concerns from citizens in that area. We're not, we're not dismissing those concerns. But it seems as though that project is going to go forward. They've complied with the regulations.
Yes.
And as much as if we hear that from conservation. And there is no way to stop that
No.
project, even if we were so inclined.
That's correct. Not signing this letter would not do anything other than, I think, to be quite honest, you create some bad feelings and in a project that, again, as you mentioned, we really don't have any control over. I won't go over the whole 40B process. I think everybody can appreciate what it is, and I'll leave it at that. I am hopeful to have on the agenda for the 18th of December hopefully a final decision on how we're going to move forward or not move forward on regional dispatch. I have had conversations with the two chiefs. I plan on having a final conversation with them sometime next week, after which time on the 18th, if everything goes as planned, we can all come before the board, and the board can make a decision one way or the other. I think, we owe it to the people that work here. We owe it, to a certain degree to Duxbury and the people that are in that regional dispatch, so they know what Hanson's interests are, so they can move forward in whatever direction, either with us included or not included.
Has everybody had an opportunity to visit that?
I can't speak to
I
that.
have to get on that.
No, I have not.
I think it's vitally important before we have a conversation as a board that people get a look at that, get to kick the tires on it on their own. I know I have independently and Kenny has
And the
independently.
existing one too, to
Yeah.
make it fair.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And then also too, just because I'm not going to be working with the regional dispatch, how about our officers and firefighters? Are we going to allow them to give their opinions on working?
we've
With
had the
regional-
chiefs give their opinion. Yeah.
The chiefs are the point people on that.
Okay.
And I will say that there were discussions during the union negotiations, and those were addressed within the union negotiations.
Okay.
I believe that probably on Wednesday, I will be signing the final documents regarding the Streeter building sale. It got a little convoluted because there was history, obviously, everyone is aware, and went back and forth between the county and the town, and the county and the town. So when they were doing their due diligence and making sure all the titles were clear, they had to do a little extra work. It would have been signed off by now, but it was a kind of peculiar situation. That should all be said and done in the middle of next week.
Did they change that?
Huh? Yeah, it's,
It's supposed to be Thursday.
no, I'd set it up,
Okay, just checking.
no, they changed it.
Okay.
They changed it. It's actually set up for the middle of next week now. Okay. And I'll just close with, actually, I wanted to mention, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back on something real quickly. The cell tower, I wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the fact the proposed lease is with our attorneys right now, being reviewed. So I think it's going to move along quicker than we originally anticipated. Their environmental review was pretty benign. So again, it'll go through the Conservation Commission, but it's not as much expected process that's going to be required. So
And the town hall, town employee appreciation thing?
we're interested in, and I'm interested in asking the board, has any interest in participating in
Just before Christmas.
a town hall employee, and of course we'd include highway or police and fire appreciation day. If the board has some interest in putting something like that together, we can talk more about it and we can put something together. Preferably within the holiday season, and I can reach out to you individually. But it's something that I've seen done in other places. I'm hopefully, I'll be able to organize all of that and get it together. But we can have conversations about what each member of the board, if they're so inclined, can do to get involved in that.
Yeah, I just thought it would be nice for us to thank everybody that's working for the town all the time on behalf of the board as a board. You know, even if it was ordering pizzas to be delivered like the week before Christmas or whatever. I don't know what, you know, whatever. But just some little token, keeping within the conflict of interest and ethics, under $50, you know, per person. Yeah, they do so much for us and all the time and willingly, and I would just like to say thank you. You know, I just thought it would be good. So we can noodle it.
Yep.
Think about it.
And the only thing I was going to close with is the budgets were due today, and budget season is pretty much beginning to get into full swing, and you know, we'll be bringing that information to you fairly soon. And as you know, maybe not the new members, but it's a fairly long process. And off the top of my head, and the brief conversations I've had with the town accountant in terms of our fiscal future, at least in the coming fiscal year, we seem to still be in decent shape. So we're going to have a conversation, our second conversation with the school department next Tuesday. As we had said during the last budget cycle, that we would try to start the conversations earlier, and we have. So, of course, the major part, or one of the major parts of the budget is the school budget, and I don't really see at this point any reason we can't come to the compromises we've come in the last couple of years. So I'm very optimistic. So, and that's really all I have this evening, sir.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Minutes for November 13th, did you guys get a chance to review them? Okay, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes for November 13th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded by Mr. Hickey. Any questions? All those in favor? 5-0. Community reports, 20th anniversary committee.
We're meeting,
200th anniversary
we
committee.
know what you meant. Would be wearing entirely different garb and not televised if we were talking about the 20th. Pardon?
No,
No,
we're saving it.
no, we're saving the best for last. We'll be meeting this Thursday, and I will report back to you at that time.
Good,
So I hope-
excellent. Energy committee, Mr. Dyer.
I'm going to actually talk with Mike sometime this week about next steps as we're approaching recognition for green community status.
Good, excellent. That's what, the 26th?
Yeah, 26, 27.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Good, excellent. Final Plymouth County Hospital Reuse Committee.
For that, we haven't met since, so no updates at this time.
Okay.
Well, actually, no, we did have a nature walk.
Yeah, how'd that
Oh, did
go?
that?
It was great. There was a good turnout, maybe about half dozen to a dozen people, and they walked the property. They
up your alley, nature walk.
yeah, on a nice, beautiful Sunday afternoon. But no, it was great. It was kind of nice. There was new faces,
Yeah, good.
all across the spectrum for age and different interests, and they're just all excited to learn about what's up there, what's to come, and how did they become a part of it. So it was
Good,
nice.
excellent. Highway Building Committee, we haven't met. As soon as as soon as that property's conveyed to us, we'll get right on it and jump in full swing. McQuon School Reuse Committee,
We are meeting on either 5th or the 6th, I don't know. Yeah.
Yes, she's doing the same
Yeah,
thing as me.
Next week.
Yes, next week, the 5th, yeah.
And we will have more to report, and I think we're gonna actually have a commercial real estate broker joining us at that meeting, so that should
Okay.
be exciting.
excellent. So now we're gonna move back up to old business, discussion and possible votes on general and labor town council services. So I will start it off just because I like to talk. First of all, I think general counsel, I'm just going to say that might be the easier one of two, just to kind of get a consensus. I think Jay's office, Talman, Kate, I think they do a great job. You know, I think Kate's been with us for a couple of years, and she's very knowledgeable, especially with the marijuana stuff that we've gone through the past year or two. Extremely knowledgeable, led us in the right direction.
Are you reading my notes?
I'm not reading your notes. So I would certainly vote, and I want to get everybody's opinion, so I don't want to steal any thunder. I would certainly vote on general counsel to retain Jay Talaman's company. If anybody wants to
Well,
speak to that.
you know, I certainly agree. I am a huge Kate fan. You know, I had anticipated going into this that I wouldn't want to change general counsel. But then when we met with the Brooks and Desmarais folks, and they started talking about the depth and breadth of what they have there, I was thinking to myself, have we, and not by Kate, but have we somewhat been a little bit taken for granted? In that, and I think Jim touched on it, maybe unwittingly, at the last meeting when he said, you know, we love Kate, and Kate's sort of become the person. And it sort of occurred to me that, yeah, Kate has become the person, but Jay was the person we signed up with. And, you know, I'm hoping that's reflected in what we're getting charged, you know, that there's a difference for Kate's services versus Jay's services. And again, I'm a huge Kate fan. I can't emphasize it enough. She's responsive. She's flexible. She can break it down into basic everyday language. She kind of gets it. She knows where the town's going. You know, she doesn't kowtow to political pressure, which can be very difficult in that role. But I'm not 100%. Like, I would really like to keep thinking about Brooks and Desmarais
Do you mean
versus.
DeRensis?
Sorry, yeah.
Paul DeRensis?
Yes.
Okay.
The woman who, she went to Cornell and then she was with, now, the reason I said them for general counsel, although they had put in their RFP that they could do labor, I forced his hand and I knew what he would say because I looked at the RFP and it was clear that they're much stronger on municipal than they are on labor. They've got a labor, component to them. And I think that maybe one of the things we should talk about up front is philosophically, do we think we need to have one firm for both or one for each? I personally feel pretty strongly that I'd like to have one labor firm and one municipal. And the reason for that is I'd like to have the agility that if things go south with the relationship or we don't think that that we don't have to start all over again with both disciplines.
I agree with that.
And it's worked out pretty well so far, I think, to have two councils. And it's good to have, if you've got a matter that might cross over into both, to be able to have a sanity check, one
Right. No, I
firm
agree with
against
that.
the other.
Let's get a quick consensus of where everybody stands on general counsel. Mr. Boss.
Mr. Bloss would say, I am absolutely between Kate and DeRensis.
Yeah.
Those would be my top two.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chair, oh,
Good.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Good.
You can go first.
I like who we have, Meade, Talaman, and Costa. And I know Laura touched on it, that Kate somehow took over for Jay, but the three of us were sitting on the board. I didn't realize it happened when it happened. And it was such a smooth transition
Correct.
that I don't think anybody noticed. The one thing, if you want to get personal with Kate, would be, I think she sees it how an everyday person, because my problem was the pot question, the marijuana question. And she simplified it so that you could understand it. You knew what you were voting on when you went in.
Yeah.
And to me, that was big.
Okay. All right, Matt.
I have nothing there to add, but I'm with you, Mr. Chair, with Gates firm.
All right. Okay. So, I think that we should just move to the vote and, move on.
So are we moving, okay, I thought that we were supposed to be asking more what is our objective tonight? Are we narrowing it down to the
We
two,
can either
which is
one.
what we were gonna
We can
do?
do, there's no agenda on that. We can pick two, come back to another meeting, have them come back. If the consensus on who we want to pick, we can pick them. We don't have to have them come back. So there's no agenda on it. What is it that you want to do? I mean, if you have 3-2 on one, I don't think there's additional conversation.
Well, and I
is
wouldn't say
necessary.
it's to two. Because we're both saying we like Kate. We're not saying we're
Right, okay.
against Kate.
And, right, you're right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So that's
No,
not, that's a good rate.
I would like to just clarify something, that I've left, after hearing the board's discussion, after the last meeting, in terms of the process, I've really tailored this agenda item to really, at the board's pleasure, if the board wishes to bring in, which was my original suggestion, another, pick two firms and bring them in for a second round of interviews. If that's a general consensus, that's the direction, we'll go in. However, I left it open enough that if the board wanted to go as far as to make up its mind this evening, that the board could make its mind up this evening. I didn't want to, I got a little concerned after the last meeting that the board may have felt I put too many constraints in the process that I'd put together. So I basically want the board to make its decision as to how it wishes to move forward, whether it's to, again, choose two people to
Me
bring,
too.
or two firms to bring back. You can make that decision, and we'll facilitate that. If the board wishes to go in another direction and make a motion this evening to name counsel if it's comfortable, you're free to do that as well. This is really how the board wishes to proceed at this point.
Actually, I will just say once again, I think this is important, and I would love a unanimous vote. And I don't want to string someone along if in the end minds are made up.
Right.
So if right now we have 3 sure votes,
I'm comfortable with my decision.
and so's Jim, and so's Matt,
I'm fine with it.
I
I
mean,
really am. I'm
and
fine.
then-
I'm more than fine with it. I
in that
like
case,
Kate.
I
and-
don't want to string them
Yeah.
along and then say no. And I mean, certainly, I think
Yeah.
I think Ms. Fedorov, I mean, this is of course, let's
She can pronounce her name.
Formalize it a little.
Let's formalize it a little. I
It's
think
much
Ms.
easier
Fedorov
than
has done a terrific job, and she's clearly in the middle of
Yeah.
3, 4.
Yeah.
Right, and Jim's right, the way she breaks it down, she treats you like a person and not, you can understand it after you're like, oh, right, it's that easy? So that does help.
Okay, so I think make the motion and, did you make a motion?
No,
Oh,
I'm looking for a
oh,
motion
okay. All right, then I move that
to
we
appoint, general
appoint
counsel.
Mead, Talaman, and Costa as general counsel.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Are there any more questions on this important decision? None. All those in favor? 5-0. Okay. Thank you. I just thought that one might be a little bit easier.
Maybe not.
I'd
Okay,
be surprised.
so next we have Labor Council. And, again, I'll go first and then you guys can chime in after. So, when we started this process, we did an RFP for Labor Council and for General Counsel in order to review the services that were provided by both our current Labor and our current General Counsel. We wanted to kind of just to see, if we were getting the best bang for the buck. We kind of had the same counsels on both sides for a while, more on the Labor than on the General Counsel. So we wanted to do an RFP. It was initiated by Matt and Laura, I believe, and Jim somewhere in here. The same thing we did with our engineering. And we wanted just to make sure, again, we were getting the bang for a buck and see what we were getting, in terms of counsel. So we did the RFP. Might come back with 5 different firms, I believe. 3 firms put in for labor, if I'm not mistaken. And we interviewed them. I thought that I thought it was going to be much harder, to be honest with you. A couple of weeks ago when we started the interview process, I thought there was going to be these big-time firms coming in and, with these high-powered lawyers and just going to be overwhelmed and they're just going to be flinging stuff. It wasn't like that at all. It really wasn't. I'm speaking for our current Labor Counsel, who is Leo Pelican. Leo's got the track record. Leo's got 14 years experience in the town of Hanson. He's dealt with over 300 employee cases over the past 14 years. And he's only had four out of those over 300 go to litigation. And as a result, he's won 4. He's 4-0 out of those. I believe Leo has always had the best interest in the town of Hanson. He's got 33 years experience himself. And again, you know, we looked at this process to see the system wasn't broken, but we wanted to test the waters to make sure that the system wasn't broken. And after interviewing the other firms, you know, again, I was looking for something that's gonna stand out better on both, on general and legal counsel. And frankly, I didn't see it, you know, so the only thing that I can go by is a track record, you know, a proven track record. These other firms came to us and, you know, promising we're gonna do this, promising we're gonna do that. Do we get that stuff? I don't know, you know? Again, I'm going back to, the only facts that I can sit here and look at, or we as a board can look at, is the current council and what he's done for the town of Hanson. You know, I don't think Leo is the best liked person in the town of Hanson. I don't think he gets many Christmas cards from employees in the town of Hanson. But I think that us as a board, we have to make the best decision for the town of Hanson, and we have to put personal differences and personal opinions aside, and we have to make the best decision for the town of Hanson. And my decision would be to retain Leo Peliquin as labor counsel because of the job that he has done for the town of Hanson, along with his experience. The other thing, and I hate to put you on the spot, I'd like to get the town administrator's opinion, because, you know, we don't deal, you know, I deal with probably attorneys a little bit more as far as the board, but certainly Mike is the one that deals with, and I should have gave you a heads up, Mike, but I'm sorry, I'm gonna put you on the spot, because you deal with, you know, with Leo all the time,
Well,
you know?
my opinion is, and it would be the same with the vote that the board just took, is that, you know, I've worked with both those firms and I'm comfortable with both of those firms. And I have experience with them and, you know, it makes sense for me to stay with those two firms.
Right, okay. So like I said, that would mean, I can't see you know, if, when you make a change, you make a change because there's something wrong. You know, there's gotta be something wrong to make a change, you know, and I just don't see it, looking at the track record. But I won't agree on one on, I'll pass it along and everybody can
I agree with
speak.
many of the points that you made. Certainly his longevity in the negotiations is important because we need to know where the bodies are buried, and he knows that. And he knows what the negotiations are, he knows the players. I'll tell you the one thing that, you know, I kind of, you know, I don't know, a little bit stuck in my craw, maybe a lot stuck in my craw, was when we were talking to Clifford Kenny, and there was another law firm who kept talking about how they had a database of comps, and when they came to the board with negotiations, they laid out, here's what people in this position are making in the other terms, you know, in the other towns. And Leo's done it, but he hasn't done it with the precision I would like to see. I'd like to see some more preparation for some of those conversations that we've had. Again, it hasn't been a deal breaker. We've gotten around to it. We've ended up getting the information, but you know, it seems to me as though that's something, I guess if we retain him, I'd want him to improve upon providing that information well in advance of those discussions. That's my only hesitancy that I have on that. You know, it seems like he's probably, I got the impression, I might be wrong, that he may be involving more, I can't recall what her name is because they've changed their name so many times now. The woman that he brought with him.
Melissa.
Yep. Yeah. So it seemed as though she was probably, I got the sense she was going to be getting more involved in our matters. And yeah, he's dealt with some pretty ugly things. And we, you know, we all know what some of those issues have been. And, you know, frankly, he was asked to do a job, you know, and he takes he has a vow as an attorney to do what his client is asking him to do, and that might not always make him the most popular person. And I think, you know, if we're really looking at some of the things that people might not be happy with, they might want to look to who was asking him to execute those things, as opposed to what he was doing.
Right.
You know, and we may not be privy to those things, or people might not be privy to that.
Right.
Okay.
Which way you wanna go?
I'll go.
Mr. Good.
Only because Laura brought up Clifford and Kenny.
Yes.
And the one thing I liked about them, and they actually went first out of the 5. But one thing that stuck in my head was that they split it up. John has the police and clerical, and Jamie has fire and highway.
But they keep each other.
Oh, yes. I actually called to make sure the notes that I took on Clifford and Kenny were correct. I talked to Mr. Clifford yesterday morning at about 10 o'clock, and he reiterated one of the things he said to us is that any negotiations starts with us, which I think Wes and Matt got a quick peek of how labor negotiations work, but Laura and I have been here a year and a half, Kenny, you're here 2.5 years. We got, any negotiations that we did or contracts that we were gonna sign, we got Friday at noontime on the agenda. Now, maybe that's my fault, and I'll only speak for me because I never asked, but I didn't know. And Mr. Clifford said, negotiations starts with us. So it's at our table in executive session, them and us, and then he goes out and negotiates the contract, or Jamie does, which for a year and a half I hadn't seen from this board at all. It was, we got the agenda Friday at noon, and it's like, oh crap, we're going into executive session. As a matter of fact, Laura, our first night,
Yes.
we were voted in,
Yep.
and an hour and 35 minutes later, we were discussing in executive session the firefighters' contract.
It was like the Twilight Zone.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was just time,
With, well, no, it wasn't, Kenny, because it was on the agenda Friday, and Laura and I were elected
Right, but the
Saturday.
Labor Council doesn't set the agenda, Jim.
Well, no, that's true, but what I liked about Kenny and Clifford was they're coming to the 5 of us, or who's ever sitting here. And it starts right here. So, I mean, I just had a
I did
couple
like
of-
their, and again, we haven't worked with them, so, anybody can say anything in a sales presentation. But I got a very strong sense of mutual respect and keeping each other up to date, and that one's weaknesses were the other one's strengths. I got a real teamwork read from them. I'm not saying I absolutely want them over who we currently have, but I liked them. I wouldn't mind considering them in the mix.
Right, okay. Is that it, Jim?
Yeah, that was it.
Matt?
So with Mr. Pelican's firm, you know what I mean, it's like, yeah, we do have to acknowledge, this is 14 years that he's been with the town of Hanson, and he, as Laura said, he knows the field. And I think that's something that we really need to recognize. I do have reservations, with him taking more clients on or trying to grow his firm a little bit. The size of his firm, he said he only had four staffers, or a size of 4. So that's something that I'm a little bit concerned about. I don't know what his strategy is for business, but that just was something that, that I just took note of. And then the one other thing was just, I talked to Mike about it briefly, so I don't know how much I can say and how much I can't say, but it's just like I do have reservations because we haven't been debriefed on things that happened 2 years ago. And, I just feel like I'm out of the loop on that. I don't know exactly where we are. So I don't really know how to judge his work when I don't know the ins and outs of
Right.
the past.
Right.
So that's just where I am with that. And as Mr. Hickey said, which was, Wes and I both got a taste of, negotiations. And I wasn't really impressed by any means. And Ms. Kemet said with Clifford that they have all that database, they have that information. And I felt really good about the Clifford firm with the databases and everything. He has experience as a town administrator. He knows what you have to do, give you action items. Like, well, if you want this outcome, this is what you have to do, X, Y, Z. And I do like how they kind of split up the work a little bit, and that they've been on both sides of the negotiation tables with the union, against the union, for the, so I was just really impressed with that.
They're
And
small,
their
too.
size.
But,
And Pembroke, but they have a
Yeah.
better ratio, I
Yes,
think,
yeah.
for client staff numbers.
Yeah.
So that's where I stand on that. So if I was to choose, I'd lean towards Clifford tonight.
Right, okay. Mr. Bloss.
Well, first of all, I agree, but I think, to me, Laura asked one of the most important questions to everybody, and I think that really sold me. So I'm going to say that Clifford and Kenny, Clifford has been a town administrator for both East Bridgewater and Marshfield. He's been involved on that side of the desk. Kate Federoff was the senior assistant solicitor for the city of Brockton and worked with the unions. She has been on the opposite side of the desk. And who was the third? Durensis, it was Berry.
Oh, yeah.
It was Peter Berry was
yeah.
2 or 3 terms as a selectman for Acton, maybe?
Acton, yeah.
I'm not sure, but it's like,
Yeah.
these are people who,
They
you
get it.
know,
Yeah.
beyond their law firm, beyond their paid job, they go out there and they have worked for communities. And the other 2 firms had nothing to say.
That was kind of interesting.
It was,
But then I thought about it, and I thought probably that's because they're primarily labor, and so they would not, you know, like if you're a municipal, you're probably gonna volunteer to do municipal, because you're into it, that's the kind of law you practice. Whereas labor is, you know, probably.
I still like
yeah.
to think that I taught, and for almost half a century, I was on boards in town, commissions in town. And I think that gives you a huge perspective to
Yeah.
think. And on the Talaman, on Kate Federoff, the other guy, Brian Winner,
Winner.
was on the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
And I was sitting here going at the time going, and yes, absolutely, Conservation Commission, Main Street. I mean, we're gonna have huge issues. They would be great for general counsel. So I will say that in the end, I thought Clifford and Kenny,
Okay.
by far, for me, I put them at the top of the labor council list. But then I thought Berry and Kate
Right.
were also good candidates.
Okay, so that looks like the consensus of the board. Did you get 3, 4? So,
Well, that's interesting. So that's what you got from that? I felt like there were 2 very strong Clifford Kennys, 2 kind of fairly strong Peliquins, for lack of knowing the rest of the names and the letterhead. And then Matt, it seemed like you were kind of, I don't know.
Right now, I'm leaning more
Yeah.
towards Clifford.
Okay,
than I am Pelican.
all right.
so in Clifford, Clifford, they did a fine job. A couple of things that I don't like the 2 separate, the one fire and all that during negotiations. I think that's a nightmare. I think when you're negotiating with 8 different unions, you need to have the same attorney. Now, if it's during a regular year, yeah, one can handle fire and all that, but 2 separate attorneys.
Okay,
during
but can I argue a
negotiating,
different side of this?
You can?
I'm an expert in fire. I now know every damn town and what the towns are doing with their
But how-
fire, and that's my exclusive domain.
Right,
So
okay,
when the
okay.
guys try to say to me, well, other guys are
Right, I
getting
can
X, Y,
respect
or
that. So
Z.
do you know what the police offered?
Well, you check it with your partner. You're still gonna
You
know.
check with your partner. If you're
You're gonna know.
negotiating
Yeah.
all those unions, you're gonna know, So
You'll
I
know.
think during negotiating time that one attorney needs to handle that. It's just my opinion. I don't know
Yeah.
how, you do negotiate. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I haven't.
Tell us
thought-
your honest
yeah,
opinion.
Yeah, no, I
If the-
haven't thought about it.
If 2 is
However,
fine, 2 is fine.
Yeah.
If one, like,
Well,
what?
if the board decides to go with this different firm, I think that I would want to sit down and have a discussion with the 2 attorneys and see. My personal opinion is I would prefer to have 1 attorney. That's my personal opinion.
So
And,
yeah.
by that I mean,
One lead.
if you go with, the one that you're talking about.
I'm just
I-
talking, just
yeah, I would-
union negotiation.
I
You're
would
not
prefer-
talking
I would prefer to have a
every day.
lead.
Yeah, I
Talking
got you.
every
I would
3
prefer to
years
have
when you're
a
going
lead.
through that.
And, if you were to have that if you were to make the decision to go with Clifford and Kenny, I'd want to have that conversation. I sort of know John from, the East Bridgewater stuff and see if maybe there is a way that he or she could be the lead.
It
I think
seems
it's more
like
comfortable.
that's their service model, though. I mean, they were pretty clear about it. I'm not saying that they wouldn't make an exception, but you know, it seemed like they were pretty clear. They reiterated it when Jim called them.
I'm not saying it wouldn't work. My opinion is I would prefer to have one point person.
All right, okay. All right, so I'm looking for a motion.
Well, I want to say it right, so I'd like to make a motion that we take Kenny and Clifford and Kenny as our new labor council.
May I ask, oh, go ahead, somebody
Hold
can
on,
second
let's
it,
get
and
a
then I
second
just wanted
first.
to ask a
Sure,
question.
I'll second that just for discussion, yeah.
Obviously, there are matters that Leo has been working on, and can you speak to that if we do end up, voting?
Well, given the motion, what I would ask is the motion be amended to maybe put a transitionary period in there, make it effective, I don't know, the beginning of
Yeah,
the
I'd like to see a
the
transitionary
calendar year.
period, and also I'd like to see a probationary period, where there's a time where, whether it's 6 months or a year, we come back and look at this.
Well, I would imagine that would be, and again, if that's at the pleasure of the board, if the board wishes such, I would imagine that the contract that we would sign would have that sort of language in it, if that's the board's direction. But I think at a minimum, if this motion is successful and goes forward, I would think that it would make sense to put that sort of a time frame on it.
So could we, to even complicate this further, could we possibly, by the contract alone, what do we typically sign a contract with?
Yeah, what's the period? That's a good
What's the
question.
period of time?
Well, technically, if you want to get technical, the town council should be appointed every year.
Okay,
You can
So-
sign a contract that goes further than that, and I think at the end of, I think that at any point in time, you'd be able to dismiss
for cause, right?
anyone for cause.
Yeah,
But, a contract is a contract. We can, you just need two parties to agree to what the verbiage is. And we can, again, if this motion passes, we can have a further conversation, given that it should have that transitionary period, that we can have, that I can have and bring it back to the board and to the degree the board. And I think the other thing I'm getting out of this, which is valuable to me, is the board wants a lot more involvement in negotiations and things, contracts and whatnot. So I could bring back, either bring the firm in and have a discussion, and again, it's just a matter of
Yeah,
contract.
because I
You
still
can
have
agree
some
to
more
anything.
questions too.
Can I interject, Mike? Because I assumed, and you shouldn't assume anything, but I thought it was a 1 year. Because as a board, we can do an RFP basically whenever we want.
Yeah.
But Mary might know the answer to the question that I'm about to ask, was when was there the last RFP for labor and general in the town? of
14,
Hanson?
right? General, I think, for 14.
Well,
Because Leo mentioned he's been here for 14
14
years,
years,
so that was
yeah.
probably the last RFP, unless one was done and
yeah,
Leo
we had done one
retained.
just about the time when we brought Leo in. We were changing labor
So
councils.
the last time Labor
And we
Council
put
had
it
an
out
RFP
there.
was 14 years ago.
We may have done another one after that, but we maintained
Leo.
and Copeland and Page at the time. And then we put it back out, we put it out for general in 2014. We had-
Okay,
I
so
saw,
it- yeah.
yeah, I saw those
2014.
dates.
okay.
that was still 4
so-
years ago.
That's how long we've had Jay.
Now, we
for
know
4 years.
what we've got with Leo, and I know you did some preliminary, kind of, I don't know, background checks
Yes.
and references. How comfortable do you feel with the, reference checks that you've done on these guys with us moving forward
Well,
tonight?
I had, and I think indicated that, prior to the conversation that we had at the last meeting, that I had gone ahead and started doing those sorts of reference checks on everyone. I mean, I didn't do reference checks on,
Excuse me.
on two current council, because it didn't make any sense.
Right.
But, all I got back on all three of the firms from the municipalities they represent right now was positive feedback. I didn't get any negative feedback on Clifford and Kenny, on Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and Lehane, or on Brooks and Durenis. So I'm comfortable with any of them moving forward in terms of the feedback that I got from other municipalities.
Okay.
Okay, Matt.
I guess through you, Mr. Chair, you know, is going back to the current state of Mr. Peliquin's work. You know what I'm talking about with the ongoing.
Yes.
Yeah. So, if we were deciding to change, are we ever going to hear a debrief from
That's what I'm
his firm?
talking about, Matt. That's what I was
Right.
talking about, is he's got work in progress.
He'll do whatever we ask him.
Well,
Work that's
I-
completed and we don't,
I think, and I don't want to speak for two groups of people that aren't here right now, but I think that in the transition period, over the next course of the month or so, that, you know, two professionals would be willing to share and give each other, you know, the back and forth and get the new person up to speed.
do
And I
you
think-
really feel that Leo's ever truly going to be able to, I mean, because without somebody exhuming bodies again and going through all these very, very painful things that, you know, we've already all gone through and.
No, I don't think that could be replicated, in all
Okay.
honesty. I mean, the 14 years of cultural knowledge, no, I don't think that can be imparted. I think that can be imparted on me.
But I'm thinking of a particular situation, which we all know, and I mean, I guess the Camp Kawani situation. And I really would, I'm trying to figure out how in heaven's name he's gonna transition that to Clifford and Kenny. I just don't, there's so much there, I don't even know how anybody would unpack it. To
can't.
you know, to give it, and so that's my question with the transition, like,
Yeah.
you know, maybe we could say that there'd be a hard cutover for the labor negotiations and stuff like that, but for all the other, for the Camp Kawani stuff, I just don't see how we could ever expect Clifford and Kenny to pick up that ball and go with it, if there is even a ball to pick up.
There isn't a ball to pick up. We've got to move on. I mean, you can't, because,
But to Matt's point, we've never gotten a debrief, we've never gotten closure on the whole thing. It's sort of like we're in limbo land on the
I
thing.
can tell you right now, Leo's gonna do the right thing. Whatever we ask him to do, he's gonna do. He's a gentleman. If we need him to come back for whatever, he'll do whatever he needs to do.
All right, well, we need some kind of closure. This needs to be wrapped up in a neat bow, and I know I might be naive in saying that,
Yeah,
but
it's,
we do
it's,
need
no, I
some
don't think that's possible.
kind of
so can I
something.
amend the motion to include a transition period up until December 31st, 2018?
January 1, yeah,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
January 1's
Yeah,
the.
you're not gonna wanna do that during.
Yeah.
You're gonna need
I was just
a
gonna
holiday.
say,
More
I was
time
just
than
gonna
that.
say.
You're already
yeah.
at the end of
As soon as I say
and you got the
January 1, I'm
holidays.
thinking New Year's.
I was thinking we'd need
You
at
gotta-
least a 6-month.
Well,
Oh,
it
let's-
depends, because if there's something that he's
I don't
working
know.
on,
Let's
it's,
cut.
if
You do
he,
just think right away? All right, I don't know.
be careful,
Yeah.
okay?
Well,
You can do a transition period, you know, and then they'll sit down and figure out what needs to be done, but, you know, Leo's got stuff out there that he needs to finish up, and you're not gonna throw it in somebody else's lap and
Right,
say,
exactly.
Yeah.
that's
You
gonna
gotta be
happen.
realistic, guys.
Can we make this motion, but have you have a discussion with both firms to find out what they each think that transition, because I don't want to give too short of a transition period if Clifford and, if Clifford says, oh, you know, that usually takes us 3 months to, and now we've put in the motion that it's a month, and, you know, but to
yeah, and I'm not
Wes's
sure
point, I
what the
don't
right
want it to
answer is
drag
to
on.
that.
Just be careful, because he has stuff that he's working on, and if you think you're just gonna cut bait, we could be in trouble. If that's what you guys wanna do, but just be careful with that, I'm just telling you.
Can we leave it open-ended with the transition period?
Can we say with the
I
transition
think so.
period to be determined?
Yeah, I would say to be determined,
You know,
yeah.
between the
I
parties.
don't think any of us
between
can
the
say what the
council.
transition period is.
Right.
You don't know what he's working
Yeah,
on.
I think, again, I'm just trying to figure out the right way to do
Once you
this.
cut bait, that's it, that's the
Yeah,
end.
I think that, I
You
think
can-
what I,
You
what
can bring
I,
him on and have him come, labor is different than general counsel. General counsel, there's always an end point
Yeah.
to whatever's happening. It's
Right.
gonna go on.
And like I said, Leo will
Labor,
do the right thing.
labor goes on forever. So any new cases that come up, if we get a grievance or whatever, the new counsel would pick it up and Leo has to finish out the cases he has.
yeah.
Yep.
I would,
You know.
to Mary's point, yeah, and I didn't really take into consideration holidays and such. it probably should be longer than the first of the year, but I think we could leave it open-ended.
Yeah, he's not working on anything, he's not working on
And the
anything.
Board of Selectmen could come back at the next meeting after I have a discussion with both entities, and I can make a recommendation based on what they think is right in terms of a transition
Well, we
period.
could certainly
can just-
motion that effective 1/1, we don't want any new matters to be going to them. I'm just making this up. And
that's
that
fine.
we'll come up with a date or matters that Pelican will continue to work on. And that's it.
So you can appoint them as new council effective January 1st.
Right. And then
With
with
that, then they
subject to
can iron it
contingencies
out.
on what.
On whatever's
Pelican's-
outstanding.
Yeah.
Saying, so the new council, have them start the first of the year.
Yeah,
Right, okay,
okay,
all right.
so.
And the last thing that I'll tell you, when you talk about contracts, when we did the municipal contract with the IT director with East Bridgewater, that was Clifford that dragged that out. And the reason why it was so late is because of Clifford. And Leo was the one that had to finish that up, so.
I thought we were being positive, Mr.
I
Chairman.
just wanted to throw that out there, when you
Okay.
brought your contract thing up, when getting them the night before, so just be mindful of that.
Getting what the
Good
Motion's
feedback.
been made and
We got it.
seconded, any more questions?
2.5 days before, same as you.
All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, looking for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion's made and seconded by Ms. Hickey. All those in favor? 5-0. Good night. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.